Kate Taylor is a reporter for the New York Times, and she wrote about Bush's legacy in Kennebunkport. Can you hear me, Kate? There you are.
I can. Thanks for having me.
So I found this very interesting because, of course, we're talking about a former president and the First Lady, but in Kennebunkport, they were citizens. They were longtime citizens. President Bush had been traveling and spending summers there since long before he was president. How are residents there reacting to news of his death?
Well, they were very sad. Obviously, it was not unexpected. He had been in failing health for many years. Some of them had said their goodbyes to him this summer when he was there. He actually just left in October. And I spoke to one man in particular, the golf professional at the local golf club, who was a very close friend, who had played hundreds of rounds of golf with him over the years and gone on fishing trips with him. He had had an emotional goodbye with him in October. And people got the news like many of the rest of us did, reading about it in the media. And they were talking with each other, trading emails, talking downtown. The town had just begun its annual week of Christmas festivities, so the town was very bustling this weekend. And people were really talking about their memories of him and mourning his loss.
This is a man who traveled the world, but I read in an interview that he said he would always return to Kennebunkport. He called it his anchor and an area of the country or town that kept him humble. What did the town mean to the Bush family?
So, yeah, he used the phrase anchor to windward, which means an anchor that a ship drops in the middle of a storm if it wants to just sit tight and prevent a wreck. And it meant that it was a place of retreat for him. He had, as you said, been going there since he was a child. He loved to drive his speedboat at full throttle up and down the coast. He loved to fish. He loved to play golf. And it was a place where he could retreat to the compound that had been in his family's possession for over 100 years, and he could also be a regular citizen and go into town and talk to people and make friends. And obviously it brought the town to great prominence when he was president. It was known as the Summer White House, and foreign leaders like Mikhail Gorbachev and Margaret Thatcher went to meet with him there, so the town really felt like they had a front seat to history during that time. And then over the years since then, he still had a Secret Service detail, but it was lower key, and he just became a beloved neighbor to many people there.
You know, earlier in the day, we played a little portion of a 60 Minutes interview with George W. Bush, and he talked about how he was preparing to meet with Vladimir Putin and grappling with where the best location might be. And he asked his father, can I take him to Kennebunkport, which he did. And he talked about how honored Vladimir Putin was, how impressed he seemed to be, and how he took him on a boat ride, and he seemed thrilled by it. I also read that George H.W. Bush, that was the first place that he met Bill Clinton. So though this was a place where the family gathered and clearly quite intimate, they were also able to sort of parlay it into a place to bring outsiders as well.
They did. But, you know, one thing that's interesting, there have been a lot of reflections in recent days on George H.W. Bush's presidency and how that political era was different from today's, and how his presidency was, of course, very different from the current presidency. And it's a really striking contrast if you think about his relationship to Kennebunkport compared to Donald Trump's retreat, which is, of course, to his golf club Mar-a-Lago, where you have all these conflicts of interest. You have people paying to be part of this club where they're essentially buying access to the president, spending a lot of money to be able to buttonhole him at dinner about their particular interest before the government or their ideas. And in contrast, you have George Bush, who found this place a tremendously peaceful, rejuvenating retreat, and the Bushes really tried to not be disruptive to the local community during his presidency, but they also were just really part of the fabric of the community. And so it's quite a contrast.
I think that is such a very interesting observation, the comparison. Very, very interesting. Barbara and George, when they were in the town of Kennebunkport, were they celebrities, or was the town sort of used to them?
Both. They were absolutely celebrities, and of course, the town is a tourist town, so it's only about 4,000 residents year-round, and then it balloons during the summer. So there are often, visitors there from out of town to whom a Bush sighting was particularly exciting. But it was exciting to everyone. But they also were very close friends with everyone from the proprietor of the family grocery store that they went to, the owners of a general store in town whose lesbian wedding the Bushes were actually witnesses at in 2013. They were involved with the local historical society and the Conservation Trust. They had very everyday relationships with the people in that town, even while they were its most famous residents.
Somehow that does not surprise me. That certainly sounds like it remains true to what everyone has said about them as a couple, and no surprise that this was their retreat. Kate, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.